All right, let's jump right into it. The headlines today are all about a new wave of U.S. airstrikes in Syria. So we're going to break down exactly what happened, why it's happening right now, and what could come next.
So the big question is, why now? Well, it turns out this didn't just come out of the blue. It's a direct response to a really tragic event that happened last month. And to really get what today's strikes are about, we've got to go back to the beginning of that story.
Okay, so let's get right to the core reason. The official line is that this is retaliation, but the language being used behind the scenes is, well, a lot more blunt. Sources are straight up calling it payback for American soldiers who were killed.
To be really specific, these strikes are a direct answer to an attack that killed 2 U.S. soldiers and their American interpreter. And this is important. This doesn't seem to be some broader shift in strategy. Nope. It's a very targeted, very direct response to that specific loss of life.
And just listen to the wording here. Sources aren't just using sterile military terms, they're using words like payback and vengeance. That tells you a whole lot about the emotion and the political drive behind this whole operation.
To really get the full picture, we have to rewind to the incident that kicked all of this off. We're talking about 2 soldiers from the Iowa National Guard and their interpreter who were ambushed in central Syria. And the perpetrator wasn't some outside enemy. It was a lone gunman who had managed to infiltrate the Syrian security forces, a classic and just devastating insider attack.
Now, here's a really crucial piece of context. Today's strike isn't actually the first response. It's round 2 of the retaliation. The first wave happened just a few weeks ago, back in December.
You can see a very clear pattern starting to form here. First, there was that tragic attack last month. That was followed pretty quickly by an initial wave of strikes on December 19th. And now, today's action is being framed as a direct continuation of that exact same mission to get retribution against ISIS.
And that first wave back in December? It was massive. U.S. Central Command reported hitting this many separate targets all across central Syria, 70. This was not a warming shot. This was a broad, forceful response.
For that December attack, the U.S. brought out some serious hardware. We're talking F-15 Strike Eagles and Apache helicopter gunships. Now, while we don't have confirmation on the exact assets used today, it's a pretty safe bet that these powerful tools are still in the region, ready to go.
But, carrying out these strikes is anything but simple. The airspace over Syria is incredibly crowded. It's incredibly complex. And that is largely because of one other major player on the ground, Russia. Russia's military presence in Syria, it's not what it once was, but they are far from gone. They still operate key bases, and they have forces in the area. And that means any U.S. flight plan has to carefully navigate around any potential encounters with Russian military assets. So how did 2 global powers with active militaries avoid a catastrophic mistake in the same airspace? They used something called a deconfliction mechanism. And what's truly amazing is just how low-tech this can be. For all the advanced weaponry, the source reports that avoiding a major incident can sometimes come down to coordinating movements over a simple mobile phone and a Gmail account. Really? Okay, so the strikes are over, the aircraft are reportedly on their way back to base, so what happens now? What are the immediate next steps for the Pentagon after a mission like this?
Well, it follows a very clear protocol. Step 1 is always about safety, getting all aircraft and personnel home and making sure they're accounted for. Step 2 is figuring out what happened on the ground. That's the battle damage assessment, where teams analyze imagery to see if the targets were actually hit. And only after they have that clear picture can we expect a formal public announcement.
And that brings us right up to the present moment. We know the what and the why behind these strikes, but as the dust settles, the bigger question is just kind of hanging there. What will the true impact be? Will this act as a deterrent, or will it just fuel another cycle of violence and an already devastating conflict? That's the question we'll all be watching.